Okay, it is 5:30. Welcome all that are in attendance for the West Interceptor Shorewood Relief Sewer Project Public Information Meeting. This is our third one. My name is Janelle. I'm just the person behind the scenes running the show today. We do have a couple decorum rules for everybody. So number one, if you wish to speak, we do ask you please to state your name first. And the second thing, and the only other thing we ask is, if possible, try to reserve your questions for when there's some natural breaks. The presenters are going to be throwing a lot of information at you, and we want to try to keep this as fluid as possible. So I do believe we have several presenters today. They'll be pausing between each section of the presentation to take questions. And of course, Eric Jellin, the project manager for this, he'll be sharing his contact information at the end. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn this over to Eric. Thank you all.
Thank you, Janelle. Hello, I'm Eric Jellin. I'm the project manager for the West Interceptor Shorewood Relief project. There's actually three phases to this project. This public information meeting is for the construction of the phase 1 project. We have had two other public involvement meetings for the overall project, and also we focused on the phase 1 project during those meetings. What you're looking at on this first slide is the green line in the middle to the left of the railroad. There is the West Interceptor Relief Sewer. That was built in 1959, and the Shorewood Relief Sewer is actually going to replace that sewer in essentially the same spot. You can see Pick and Save in the lower left there, and then there's Highbury and Western, and then kind of in the distance you can see Shorewood Boulevard, which is where this project's going to end on the east side. Next slide, please, Janelle. So a little bit about MMSD. We were established 90 years ago. The state established the district. Some of our pipes are actually older than the district. We serve 360,000 people in 26 communities. Our overall service area is 184 square miles. Within that service area, we have 141 miles of pipe. Most of which is interceptor pipe and force main pipe that directs the wastewater to the treatment plant, where we treat on average about 41 million gallons of sewage a day. Within the overall system, the black lines on this map are the interceptor pipes. The interceptor pipes direct the flow to pump stations, which are the red circles. And the pump stations will pump the flow up hills and through force main pipes. Next slide, please. So what exactly is an interceptor pipe? An interceptor sewer, a typical interceptor sewer, it's going to be a large pipe that accepts local flow. In our case, it would accept flow from the local communities, and a lot of interceptors will direct the wastewater to a treatment plant. In our case, in the case of the district, actually all of our interceptors direct flow to pump stations, and all of the flow is pumped to the wastewater treatment plant through 4 large pump stations. And there's the diagram here kind of shows typical construction. You know, the width will vary, the depth will vary. You know, restoration in the end. Maybe of more interest in this slide is the portion on the bottom there. You can kind of see a profile view where the collector pipe, the interceptor sewer, goes to the pump station pumps it up a hill, and then it goes down again, and in some cases it may go to another pump station where it has to pump up the hill again, and eventually it ends at the wastewater treatment plant. Next slide, please. So the West Interceptor system, the original West Interceptor was actually built in 1916. That's the orange highlighted pipe on this map. It was added to in 1932, and that's the green highlight. And there were a number of other additions, including that West Interceptor relief in 1959. The latest addition was the West Interceptor campus relief from 1999 to 2004. And that was done in 4 phases. On the east end, it is, I believe it ended in Regent Street, somewhat north of Camp Randall. And then on the west end of that project, we ended at Walnut Street, which is just a little bit east of Highland Boulevard. Next slide, please. So the reason what's driving this project is the need for capacity in the district. What you're seeing here, the red line, actually the red and then the light green that is on the end of it in the middle of the map here, that is actually the phase 1 portion of this project. We're going to be replacing that pipe, which is the West Interceptor relief. The red means that we need additional capacity. Well, we're overdue for additional capacity. We needed it by 2020, and we actually did have a couple overflows in the large storms of, I believe it was 2018 when we had those really massive storms. The orange means we're going to need capacity within the next 4 years, either now or within the next 4 years. And the light orange, more on the right side of the photo here, or the image, is that's going to be the future phases, phase 2 and phase 3 of this project. We hired Strand engineers to perform to design the entire Shorewood relief, which is the phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, and which is kind of shown the red. From the end of the red to the end of the green, that's pretty much where the phase 1, 2, and 3 are. And I'm going to turn it over to Tom Stetzer. He's with Strand Engineers. He was the project manager at Strand for this project, and he'll talk a little bit about alternatives analysis and when the 3 phases will take place.
Yeah, thanks, Eric. Next slide, please. Yeah, so our project design started back in 2019, and really the first step in that process was for us to do some data collection, but then to start our alternatives analysis portion of the project. And so we looked at the entire corridor, and we started looking at some different alternatives for where this new relief pipe could go. So tonight we're mainly going to be focused on kind of the area within the red box on the screen there that you'll see, which is the phase 1 limits, like Eric had mentioned. And so in this area, again, back in 2019, we had looked at primarily 3 different options for routing the new relief sewer. We looked at one option kind of that went through the golf course, kind of through the middle of the course. The second option was the middle option, kind of in a medium red color, I guess you could say, which is just north of the railroad tracks. And then we looked at a third option on the south side of the railroad tracks. As Eric mentioned, the existing relief interceptor sewer goes on the north side of the tracks. And so, we looked at a variety of things. We had one public information or involvement meeting to receive input from stakeholders from the communities. We talked to the city of Madison multiple times. We met with the village of Shorewood Hills to get some valuable input. We talked to the managers of the Black Hawk Country Club as well. We looked at things like constructability, tree impacts, potential impacts to roadways, potential impacts to bike trails in the area, utility impacts and things like that. And so we went through a very thorough analysis, and kind of where we landed is that really the only constructible place for this pipe was going to be just north of the railroad tracks. And so our original plan was to build an additional sewer, relief sewer, kind of in between the railroad tracks and the existing West Interceptor relief. However, after diving into the design a little bit, we realized that there just wasn't enough space, and due to some of the restrictions that the railroad has, we just really could not thread the needle and get that pipe in there safely. We looked briefly at putting the new pipe to the north of the existing pipe, and then we really started getting into some severe private property issues, which would have impacted trees on private property, for example, multiple easements and things like that. And so in conclusion, we came to the solution of, well, we're going to have to replace the pipe basically in the same spot that it is today, just with a larger pipe to meet those capacity needs, as Eric mentioned. So you can see there, zooming back out a little bit in the red box 2021, we're going to jump forward on the east end for 2022 to that pipe will go in along with the University Avenue roadway project that's scheduled in 2022. And then 2023 is when we'll kind of connect the dots, in between those two phases. And then we might have a little bit of work at the very east end to do our final connections. The next slide kind of zooms in a little bit just on the phase 1 route, which we're mainly here to talk about tonight. All right, so the phase 1 route, you can see in kind of the red line on the screen there, which starting at kind of the western edge of Indian Hills Park, and then travels, the pipe travels all the way over to just west of Shorewood Boulevard. So again, like as I mentioned, the new route will replace the existing pipe with a larger pipe and generally the same location, just north of the railroad tracks. I also want to mention that throughout our design phase, we did have a certified arborist, Brianna Frank from Tree Health Management on our design team. She went in and tagged and evaluated every tree along the corridor to help us, I guess, understand the best alignment for our pipe, but then looking forward, also to put together a tree protection plan, the next bullet point on the upper right there, that the contractor will have to follow during construction. And some of those activities have already started here recently, as the arborist has been out there to do some minor tree pruning. And then there'll be some additional tree protection items that'll take place in the future, including some air excavation and pre-cutting of roots. And then there will be some removal of some select trees out there along the corridor. I just want to mention that within the bid package, it was a requirement that the contractor had to hire a certified arborist. It turns out that they are going to use Tree Health Management, which was also the arborist involved during the design phase. So there's some nice consistency there, again, to proactively implement that tree protection plan that Brianna drafted throughout the project. Next slide, please. This is just kind of a little diagram similar to the one Eric had up earlier on, how is this pipe installed? Well, as Eric mentioned, interceptor sewers are gravity pipes. And so we need to maintain gravity downward flow throughout the sewer. And as I mentioned on the selection of the alignment, really, we try to do everything we can to try to avoid, impacts that are going to lead to constructability issues, high value trees, maybe, certain streets or bike paths that are going to cause major disruptions to daily commutes, et cetera. And so the diagram on the right is just kind of a little, diagram to show how a trench is excavated down. And then this pipe in particular for phase 1 ranges from anywhere from like 10 to 15 feet below the ground, which is, I guess, somewhat average for a sanitary sewer. Some are a little bit deeper. We have had some sewers in the district in the upwards of 40 to 45 feet, which is on the very deep end. But in this area, being in the 10 to 15 foot range, what's nice about that is the contractor doesn't have to excavate quite as wide of a trench to get down that deep to install the pipe. Next slide, please. So with any construction project, there's going to be some impacts, right? So just wanted to highlight a few of those things now as we're getting close to construction, and we're going to talk about schedule here in a minute. But what are going to be some potential impacts and disruptions during construction? So the first bullet point item here, road closures of Highbury Road or Western Road. That's at the eastern end of the project, just west of Shorewood Boulevard. The reason it says "or" there is because in the contract, the contractor is going to have to close both of those streets to get the pipe in. However, they are not allowed to close both of the streets at one time. They can only close one of the streets at a time. So as they're, typically the contractors will install pipe from downstream to upstream. So in this case, that means they're going to be starting down by Shorewood Boulevard and slowly working their way west. So the first, full closure that'll happen due to the excavation activities will be Western Road. So that one will be closed. Meanwhile, Highbury will be open at that time. And then as the contractor continues digging to the west, there will be a short period that Highbury will be closed while the pipe is put in, and then Western Road will be back open at that time. The second bullet point there, the temporary detour. So I mentioned Shorewood Boulevard. So one of the first things that the contractor has to do is set up bypass pumping operations. And so this pipe that we're replacing has active wastewater running through it. And so they have to set up pumps basically to pump, through their own above ground piping kind of around the project essentially, so that they can work on the pipes without active wastewater running through them. So there's going to be anticipated one-day closure of southbound Shorewood Boulevard while this initial bypass pumping operation is set up. The reason it's only going to be one day is because MMSD, in discussions with the village, we elected to add an additional manhole on the project, what's called a doghouse manhole. And so the contractor will build that just west of Shorewood Boulevard solely for the purpose of being able to bypass pump into it. It just, while they're constructing that manhole, the contractor has to have a place to go with that sewage. And so it'll be pumped into the manhole in southbound Shorewood Boulevard. So as I mentioned, there's going to be a one-day closure for that. We do have a detour plan where traffic will be routed, southbound traffic only will be routed over to Western Road, and then traffic can then get back over to Shorewood Boulevard when they make the left turn. Northbound Shorewood Boulevard will remain open throughout that process. Again, after the one-day closure, the new manhole will be in place, and the contractor will start bypass pumping into that new manhole so that Shorewood Boulevard will not be impacted after that. The next bullet point on the upper right, so temporary detour of the commuter bike path near Indian Hills Park. So this will be near the end of the project as the contractor gets far enough west where about halfway through the golf course is where the existing commuter path that runs along the south edge of the golf course turns and then crosses the railroad tracks to the south side. The new pipe will be essentially going right about where that bike path is located. So there's going to be a period of time when that bike trail is shut down and bike traffic will be routed then along Whitney Way, South Whitney Way, and then we'll take a left on Old Middleton Road heading east along the bike paths and existing multi-use trail, and then they can stay on the commuter path along the south side of the tracks all the way into the city. One of the items in the alternatives analysis that I mentioned that was concerning about the pipe being on the south side of the tracks was that we would impact that commuter trail even further to the point where that trail would essentially be out of service and bikers really won't have a good east-west option through there. Since we're only impacting it in the Indian Hills Park area, bicyclists, though it will be an inconvenience, can still get down Whitney Way and then over to the commuter path. And then the last bullet point item is just, again, with any construction project going on, there's going to be some noise and activity along the railroad corridor. That'll be a bit of a nuisance for a while. Next slide, please. A couple other items that we wanted to mention. After the MMSD sewer was put in, as Eric mentioned decades ago, there was plenty of other utilities that went in throughout the corridor. I mean, railroad corridors in general are popular places for things like fiber optic cabling and things like that to get routed. And so when evaluating this project corridor, we came to the realization that there was a fiber optic cable owned by UW Health that was going to be in direct conflict for a long stretch of our pipe in this corridor. And so you've likely noticed some activity out there already, but the UW Health fiber contractor is relocating their fiber optic line throughout the corridor on the south side of the tracks, and I believe a little bit along University Avenue, basically to relocate, to get out of the way so that this project can then happen. And then other potential impacts, again, I mentioned the arborist has been out as of this week doing some more inspections on trees. There's been some tree pruning that has started. Our technicians from Strand were out today to basically put some wood lath with ribbon out there to mark where the new pipe is going. So anyone who stops by should see those. They're spaced about every 100 feet. And those lath are going to further help the contractor and the arborist understand kind of final decisions on some of these prunings, some of the transplanting that will be taking place by the village, and then some trees that will have to be removed in the railroad corridor that's on the DOT property. Next slide, please. So I'm sure everyone's anxious to hear about when this is going to happen and when the major disturbance is going to happen. And we did have our pre-construction meeting here a couple weeks ago. I know that the contractor is Advanced Construction is the name of the company. I know their schedules has been a little bit fluid. I know it's kind of nearing the end of heavy bidding season for contractors. So they're trying to figure out when they're going to get all their work done throughout the year. And so kind of top left and working our way down here, we did bid the project at the end of 2020. Bids came in right before Christmas. In January, the project was awarded to Advanced Construction, and now things are kind of gearing up to the construction phase. And so, like I mentioned, in March, you'll see maybe some light activity with some of the tree, the tree pruning and tree removals and things like that. Originally, the contractor's initial construction schedule was scheduled to start in early April. As of today, in discussions with them, I know Eric talked to the contractor today. It looks like we're probably looking at early May, it seems, for kind of the heavier construction activity to start. So the schedule might push about a month as far as the start date is concerned. However, we anticipate the construction then to start in early May and kind of continue toward the end of the year. Contractually, the contractor does have till the end of the year to finish the project and get all the sewer connections made and things like that. The contractor is anticipating right now this to be around a 5-month project or so, 5 to 6 months based on their preliminary schedule. So if they start in May, again, start at the east end, slowly work their way to the west end, that would put them kind of in the Indian Hills Park area, kind of in the October timeframe, again, based on the schedule provided by the contractor. And then, future construction phases, zooming back out a little bit, as Eric mentioned, phase 2, which is the eastern segment of the project from Marshall Court to over closer to Highland Avenue, kind of in between University Bay Drive and Highland Avenue. That's scheduled for 2022, and that'll be concurrent with the University Avenue roadway project. And then 2023 is kind of when MMSD and our project team will come back and connect the dots. So there'll be a little bit of work down by Highland Avenue, as I mentioned, and then that middle section in Shorewood Hills to connect phase 1 to phase 2 to over to Marshall Court. That'll happen and is planned for 2023. So it'll be, more PIMs to come for those phases as we get in the heavy, design phase for phase 3, for example, and then pre-construction type of PIMs as well. The phase 2 portion, as I mentioned, we are going joint with the City of Madison with SDOT University Avenue project. So the MMSD sewer component will be bid with that project. So I know there was a recent PIM for the roadway project. So just wanted to mention that as well. Next slide, please. And here, I guess I summarized most of this already. I understand the text is probably a little bit hard to read. This was just the preliminary schedule provided to us by the contractor that shows kind of an estimated timeline of around 5 months. Again, originally they were thinking they'd be starting by mid-April. It's looking more like the early part of May as of right now. So that would probably put them into October kind of time frame according to their schedule. And again, contractually, they have until the end of the year, end of December to get everything substantially complete. There's probably going to be, depending on weather and things like that, there'll probably be a little bit of restoration type of work in the spring of next year that'll have to get buttoned up by the contractor to make sure everything's looking really nice before they wrap everything up. Next slide, please. So yeah, I know Eric wanted to mention that there's an option for email updates, I believe, on the district's website. And I went on there today as well to check it out. But there's an option for you to provide your email address and your name to receive email updates along the way for schedule updates, things to expect, and things like that. So I guess maybe, Eric, I'll turn it over to you to maybe facilitate any Q&A.
Sure, sounds good. Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I believe the email alerts, you can sign up. There's a project page on our website, and if you go to that project page, then you should be able to sign up for those email alerts. And basically, it'll be schedule updates and things like that. So next slide, please. Yeah, I guess we're at the end. So if you have any questions, of course, ask now. Give me a call. My phone number is there. Send me an email. And if there's any questions right now, we'd be happy to take them.
Eric, I have a quick one.
Okay.
That all looks great. Thank you. Thank you very much for all of your due diligence to your team and consultants. A question I had is, and maybe this is for Tom, how long do you think the bike detour at the west end will be?
You're muted, Tom.
Tom, you're muted.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure how long.
There you go.
There we go. Sorry about that.
We didn't hear a word you said.
Okay, I'll start over. It wasn't going very well. So. No, I think in my mind, I was trying to get a sense of the sense of scale and how much length of that project is versus the full corridor. You know, from what I remember, it's maybe about 20 to 25% of the overall length. So, I mean, it's not going to be days or weeks. I mean, I shouldn't say it's not going to be a days type of closure, Dave. It's probably going to be a month or two. I would guess that's going to be in place. Wouldn't you say, Eric? Because as soon as they reach kind of the middle of the golf course, from that time forward, they're going to be kind of impacting that trail until they make their last connection on the west end. So, it's probably going to be a month or two, I would think, before they can get that buttoned up. And then the thing they'll be, pushing up against is, the weather will be starting to get cold, by the time we get to October. So, we're going to have to get a nice paved surface for the commuters before the weather turns sour.
Okay. Could I ask that, and this was something we talked about, Eric, and the village would be happy to work with you on this and help host or coordinate or what have you. But I think a meeting of bicycle stakeholder groups, maybe 2 months prior to when the closing is anticipated. So maybe sometime in July or August. And really, it's not necessarily to ask them, if the world was your oyster, what would you do? It's more of, this is what's going to happen. This is the detour. This is the route. Given this is the route, is there anything special we can do in terms of signage or communication, or how can we help you guys get the word out that this stretch of this bike path will be closed for this period?
Yes, we could definitely do that. And I think that's a great idea. And we had remembered that, and I'd kind of been keeping it in the back of my mind, but I think waiting until we get the schedule pinned down a little closer makes sense too. And like you said, hit it, have the meeting a couple months ahead of when it's going to be closed.
Great.
Well, maybe midsummer.
Yeah. Keep us posted.
We will.
That's all I had.
Okay, thank you, Dave.
Thanks, Dave.
Any other questions? As Tom said, I think the only work that's been done so far is a couple I think it's 2 oak trees have been trimmed Those oak trees need to be trimmed before the end of March in order to avoid the spread of oak wilt. As the temperatures rise, then the oak wilt can get into cut branches, and the branches needed to be cut so that we can so that Advance can get through with their equipment without breaking the branches. So this way they're pre-cut, and I'm not sure she covered them with anything or not, but in any case they're pre-cut, so there shouldn't be any breakage of those limbs during construction. And there will be more trees to be trimmed, trees to be removed during the project, and that's what that staking is out there for right now. We're gonna meet in the next week or two. I'll meet out there with the contractor and with our tree protection subcontractor, well, with the contractor's subcontractor, with Brianna, and we'll go through and figure out, which trees are, definitely need to go, and which trees definitely need to be trimmed, and which branches, and all that. So
I do have a second question, Eric.
Mhm.
And I don't know who would be the best one to do this. What's the diameter of the current pipe, and what's the diameter of the pipe going in?
The pipe going in it's 36 inch at the west end of the project. So through the golf course, that's all 36 inch. And then after it leaves the golf course, then we have a little more slope. So it's actually steeper. So it's a smaller pipe. It's 30 inch once you get like from the golf course to Shorewood Boulevard. The existing pipe, I believe it varies in size. Some of it's 27 inch, some of it's I believe down to 24 inch.
24. There might be a little 21 in there too, Eric. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And then how does that work? If you're going to be taking out, and I don't know if you can give a layperson explanation. So you're going to take out the old pipe. Well, first you're going to put in a bypass, but in the section you're working on, and then you take out the old pipe and put in the new pipe, and then take the bypass away and fill in.
Yeah, that's basically it.
Okay.
So you'll go to an upstream manhole and put your pumps near the manhole. And so you'll pump out of that, and we'll have pipe laying next to the railroad, or probably closer to the railroad. And then that'll pump to the next downstream manhole that's intact. And then, so now you've kind of isolated that whole section, and from there you can take out all the old manholes and the old pipe and put your new pipe in.
Okay.
Hey, Eric, just another quick question. Curious about, so it sounds like you're getting into maybe October for potential completion with that 5-month schedule. Curious if you guys got a hard stop completion date on the project that you're shooting for, or if it's more of like a time frame thing in the contract with Advance there.
Yeah, our substantial completion it's December, it's late December. So they have up until late December to have substantial completion, which means basically the pipe's in the ground and it's ready to go. And then the final completion actually isn't until May. So technically, if they went up to that, if they had delays for whatever reason, and they couldn't get a permanent, the asphalt plant's closed down, so that maybe they have to use temporary asphalt, or if their landscape restoration, if they put down seed and nothing grows, then they have to come back next May and finish up.
That makes sense. Thanks.
Okay, I guess I'll do the going once, going twice thing for any other questions. So if there's any other questions, going once.
Eric, will this